Absolutely nothing beats windshield time. Welcome back to Dan the Road Trip Guy, a podcast where we have candid conversations about life lessons learned on the road. I'm your host, Bimmer enthusiast and road trip extraordinaire, Dan Neal. And now, on to the show. All right, I'm excited today. My guest is Stephen Peele, and Stephen and I were introduced to one another by a mutual friend probably about 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, a long time ago. And I just have a great deal of respect for him. When you meet him, he's just this guy who gives you a warm sense of a greeting. So I just am excited to have a little virtual road trip chat with Stephen today. So welcome to the show, Stephen.
Thank you. I look forward to it. You've always, I got a warm spot in my heart for you as well. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. I like to start my show with my favorite racetrack is Mid-Ohio up in Lexington.
Mm-hmm.
And warm-up lap, it's going to take us a couple minutes. And I'd just like to know, for people to tell my listeners, who is Stephen Peele?
Yeah. Just a kid that grew up in the Bronx and through that experience, sort of learned a lot about people, learned a lot about just being around different kinds of people. So that's probably the first thing that marks my life. I try to be a likable person because I actually like people. No matter where you are, you can find commonality. I now say to people, we're all having a human experience. And the reason I say that is because I find that so many people see the differences between us as barriers that we can't overcome. And that has become sort of my mantra with them. It's to help them break through that and just acknowledge that we probably got more in common than we think.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
And if we think we have more in common, we'll look for it. That's the other thing. If I don't think it's there, I won't look for it. But if I do think it's there, I will. Yeah. So, I'm a guy that's, traveled a lot, worked at different companies, learned a lot of different things for the simple reason of I love people and I love being around them to learn from them. And through that experience, I come to love them more, which is sort of an interesting thing. You would think some people would tell you that getting to know people makes you angry and frustrated and see their warts. I actually believe it's the opposite. I believe getting to know people and believing that there's some commonality would actually cause you to love them more.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The growing up, family. You have family, right?
Yeah, I got two older sisters. One's in Connecticut, one's in New York. Went to math and science schools. I went to the Bronx High School of Science in the Bronx way back when. Then I went to MIT for my undergraduate degree. And then when I came to Cincinnati, I went to the University of Cincinnati for my master's. So I've thoroughly enjoyed sort of the learning process over that period of time.
Yeah.
Got married, 30-something years ago to a woman I met, the love of my life that I met in Cincinnati when I came here. We have 4 kids. They're all ranging from 31 to 27. So
yeah. All local or spread about?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I've traveled a lot. I've always tried to encourage them to go places, and they won't go. So it's like, every time I see them, it's like, okay, so who's going to go somewhere interesting? And they're all local. We're blessed because they hang with us probably more than you would expect. They love my wife and myself, and we've tried to keep them as close as is practical, and they've stayed.
Yeah.
So 2 grandkids so far, 2 little girls. We're building the generations gradually. My mom is still alive, which is really cool. She's in her 90s, late 90s at this point. And she lives real close to us, so it's a nice circle. Even we're kind of weird because we love both sides of our family, and you start to realize how many people can't say that.
Yeah, that's not the common thread, and I was fortunate too to have 2 sides of a family that were just great. This is a trip it's about road trips. Dan, the road trip guy, and wish we were tooling around Cincinnati. We'll have to do that for another time. But tell me about your very first car.
Oh, shoot. That one's easy. It was a 1978 Camaro, white with blue stripes. It wasn't the top of the line, but it was awesome because I bought it myself not long after I left college. So I tooled around Connecticut and in New England. I used to love to drive. So I would just get in the thing and just tool back and forth. For a while, I lived in New York and worked in Connecticut. Every morning I was on the road heading up the turnpike to my job, and that was easy 2.5 hours. But I love driving, so that sort of made it okay. That car being the first one, I ended up customizing it quite a bit, learned about cars through it. The hard way, New Yorkers are tough because it's easy for somebody to cheat you on cars, but then you learn all the ins and outs of what's required and what's appropriate in maintaining them.
Yeah, for sure.
It can be a bad thing, but it turned out being a good thing. I was very attentive to what kind of things cars need.
Yeah. Was that an automatic or a stick?
It was an automatic.
Automatic. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't get my first stick until later, and fell in love with sticks after that.
Yeah. Is that a car you wish you would have hung on to? It's funny, I talk to my guests, particularly the car people, and I'll be like, and you kept that car, right? And
yeah,
they'll be like, no, I didn't.
No, I had another favorite one, a 1985 Toyota Supra.
Ooh.
Which was, that was probably my first brand new car. That was a stick. I ran that thing for 200,000 miles and it was still in great shape. I remember my son, who did pick up my love for cars. He's a 240 guy.
Okay.
So he's customized 240s. I still have a basement full of parts from him right next to my parts. But that Toyota Supra was just probably my ultimate favorite car up until when I started doing the SHO thing.
Yeah. We'll talk about that shortly. And the Supra's back,
I know, I saw that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It doesn't, I don't think it has a stick, but it's pretty sporty, pretty nice.
Yeah. Back to your mom, I shared with you early on reasons for this podcast a little bit. And you've probably already extinguished all your or asked all your questions of her, maybe. But
No.
I like to encourage my listeners to engage the people around you and ask questions, because at some point it will be too late and you will have 101 unanswered questions, is what I like to say.
I think that is so true.
Yeah. Growing up or later, any epic road trips that just stand out in your mind of, oh, I got to do that again?
Lots of road stories, because when I moved to Cincinnati, I used to go back and forth between Cincinnati and New York, and anybody who's made that trip, that's an 11-hour trip easy. So the good side of that was that, I got plenty of opportunities to take my kids to New York City. They remember that. I mean, the times when we would get in the car, we'd be frustrated with each other, but we tooled to New York. We got lots of time to just talk and hang together. They got to see things that, just were once in a lifetime experiences. There were a couple of times when my mom, because she still lived in New York at the time, we would just drop them off and she'd take them for a week, and she'd take them to Central Park, and, they'd ride the horses, and they'd see the motorcycle cops down there. That was probably in my early time, one of the more epic trips was to just go to New York, take them with us, and go see the sights in New York.
Yeah.
And to this day, they talk about it.
Yeah.
They'll never forget that. And it was a joy for me, because the funny thing about being from New York is you don't really take part in all the things that are in New York. Like the first time I went to, the World Trade Center was showing somebody else the World Trade Center, and the Statue of Liberty showing other people. So when the kids would go with us, the couple of times we did, I mean, it was like, okay, well, we have to show them all the sights.
Yeah, it's funny when you grow up in a place, you just kind of overlook things that are right there in your own town, right?
You do. And we took them to the museums. We went down to the Guggenheim. We went down all along Central Park, rode bikes. So it was epic for them because, they saw us a little differently because we just decided to really enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, for
So, so,
sure.
so that's probably the big one. One of the times I used to sell parts for the SHO. So my other epic road trip was down to Road Atlanta for one of the conferences.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was fun because I brought all my custom parts. I customized my car. And so I put it in the lineup so everybody could see all the things you could do to the car. I did not race it, so I was able to drive it home.
There you go.
Because a number of people, because we all caravan down there, and a number of people that came even from Ohio went out there and took it on the track and burned out their brakes and seized up stuff. And I was blessed because I didn't do those things. I get to watch it, but I could drive home.
Yeah. Yeah. We've had some racing friends and they'll be like, yeah, on Thursday afternoon, the big haulers are coming in, dropping off the cars. And then on Sunday afternoon, the flatbeds are coming and towing some cars home.
That's right.
So, yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
Sure. Hey, I never knew you went to MIT. I was browsing your LinkedIn this morning, and I'm like, wow, MIT. I didn't know that. What was there something when you were growing up? Oh, this is what I'm going to be, and so I'm going to go to MIT. What's the story there?
Yeah, great question. I was originally going to go into the Air Force and become a fighter pilot. That was what my childhood dream was, and I was working in that direction. I went to Bronx Science for that reason because I wanted to prep myself, and then I got an approval for the academy. But guess what happened? My eyes went bad.
Oh no!
So right in that end of high school period of time, they started going bad, and it was one of those pivotal moments. It was, okay, you can go in the Air Force, but you won't fly. Do you still want to go in the Air Force? And I actually decided not to because I said, well, I still love airplanes, so maybe there's an alternative in engineering that would be good for me. And we talked back and forth, and so I applied to different schools. My top two were going to be Caltech or MIT for engineering, and so I diverted to an engineering career. Went to MIT.
Yeah. What was that first job that you talked about driving to?
Oh, that was in Connecticut. It was United Technologies Research Center. So I was in the labs at that point. Lots of funny stories there because, Connecticut's got a big biker community. And so when I started work there in the research center in one of their wind tunnels, I was doing some internal combustion engine research and met this awesome guys that rode motorcycles in my first foray in terms of Harleys. So the guy would, whenever my car wouldn't work, and that happened every so often, he would drive me to work on the back of his Harley. So
that's great.
So that sort of infected me around motorcycles, and was really just a cool story because we were sort of the odd couple. I'm tall and black, and he was sort of chunky and short and white, and yet we were the best of friends.
Oh, that's great, isn't it?
It was, and people saw us together, and I'm on the back of a Harley, and people would just look, and we just got the biggest kick out of it because, if you'd looked at us or we had looked at each other at a different season in our lives, we would have said, oh, I can't talk to that guy. But no, we became fast friends.
Yeah, that's great. It just brought back a memory from our time in Haiti. And Lauren, our daughter, had a moto down there, not a motorcycle, but they called them motos. And that's how a lot of people got around. And they have moto taxis where you can ride around with a guy that's driving you. So I'm driving her moto one day, and I have a Haitian on the back with me. And everybody is just staring at us.
Oh,
who's the white guy driving the moto? What's going on here?
Well, that's funny.
Yeah, I just have great memories of that. Hey, we talked about the SHO a little bit. That's always been intriguing to me with you. And, I saw it on your LinkedIn again, and I'm like, oh, I got to talk to him. Because I never really knew the story of why you started that. And so tell us about that and that little journey with the Ford SHO. And for people who don't know what that is, you can tell them, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, the Ford SHO was the first real performance sedan in the United States. And many people relate to the BMW, as the performance sedan. But at the time in 1989, when Ford introduced it, it was a high performance sedan that really beat just about everything else on the street. The beauty of it was it didn't, especially as I was starting to have kids, what I wanted was something that was still family friendly, but had performance to it. So that's why I gravitated toward that particular model. And they've developed it since 1989 up until today. So up until 2019, you could get a Ford Taurus SHO. And what you got early on was a Yamaha engine in a Ford chassis. And, and Yamaha known for the motorcycle element. So pretty high revving power plant, high compression ratio, and really made for a pretty spirited drive.
Yeah.
And so my personal drive was, I'm not really going to go for a minivan. I really want something that can perform, but can carry kids.
Yeah, for sure.
And so
big back seat, right?
It did. It was great. It's even today, it's got a huge trunk. It's got, 4 seats that are comfortable, and yet it's a good, reasonably good performing sedan.
Yeah. How'd you get in the parts business?
I wanted to learn. I was working at GE and I was doing some what they called e-business work, which was all the web associated activities.
Okay.
So as the company was moving into that, they were pretty much encouraging people to learn more about the whole web and how do you sell on the web and how do you do supply chains, web-based supply chains. And so I learned about that on my own by starting my own parts business.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's great.
Yeah. So I called it Cincinnati SHO. It was focused on the car because I loved the car and I was learning more and more about it. And so as I was learning about it, I was interacting with people on the internet about it. And then there was a cult following for the SHO. It pretty much started in '89 and is still out there.
Yeah.
So you'll find show clubs that are still active. Even with the new models, again, I learned a lot about the car, met a bunch of new people that loved the car. We had a local club and there was a national club. And then on the side, I was selling parts, performance parts and accessories for the SHO.
Yeah. Are you still involved in that?
Not as much. I don't sell as many parts. So that means my garage and my basement is full of them.
Yeah, sure.
I still have a couple of SHOs, two 1994s.
Okay.
One is they're both sticks. I forgot about that. One's green and one's white. And so I keep those as garage babies because they were the mules for all the things that we developed. We developed a fiberglass hood. We developed a bunch of internal accessories. We sold, upgraded shocks and springs, lowering springs and things like that. So that took us into that realm. There were a lot of things you could do in the early models to up the horsepower, probably 30 or so. Between that and going to some of the dyno places and some of the customization shops, you could do some tours around the country specifically for that particular car and find a number of people that were specializing in it.
Wow. That's great. I love that. Looking down your LinkedIn and want to talk about a little bit, you also are a pastor.
Yeah.
Tell me about that journey.
Yeah.
Where did that start and what's going on there?
Yeah, no, it's funny. When we were building a house back when we first got married, we were looking for someplace and we sort of dedicated ourselves to the fact that, look, we're not going to find a house until we find a church. And just because of the belief system of both myself and my wife, we said, okay, then God will show us where we should live based on where we worship. And so we found a church in Loveland, subsequently called Living Word Fellowship, and we started worshiping there. And pretty soon after that, we ended up living in Loveland. In that exchange, it come to find out the pastor at the time was a pilot, and we hit it off when we came to the church. We loved the church. We loved the diversity of the church, the kind of people, the men involved, all those things. And over time, he decided that he wanted to pretty much get out of it, and he felt like God was calling me to it. Prior to that, I was doing things at work like sending scriptural encouragements to people. I was finding my own faith, but it wasn't really something I wasn't looking for a career as a pastor, put it that way.
Right.
And but he and I became close because of the common interests. I love him, and he taught me so much. And then one day he and his wife decided they wanted to retire, and they felt like God called me to be the pastor of the church. Prior to that, I had been a cell group leader. I had, spent a lot of time just encouraging and mentoring and loving on people. So it was a natural fit from that standpoint. And so when he said, we think God's calling you to do it, we prayed about it, that no, we agree with you. We feel like that's appropriate. So 20 years ago this month, we took over the church, and it's been a crazy but satisfying road ever since.
Yeah. Well, thank you for answering the call. A lot of people would have said, "Oh, no, I don't think I can do that." I think you're probably the perfect guy. Just, we don't see each other that often, but like I said early on, whenever I do see you, it's just like, wow, there's just something that comes off from you that just makes you feel good. And I don't know how to describe that in words, but it just happens.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'll refer to your LinkedIn because I did look at your LinkedIn more than I normally do. That's how I caught back up with you. You are a constant learner.
Yeah.
And you've had, we won't call them jobs, I don't think, because they look like more than that to me. Out of all those, which one have you enjoyed the most? What do you really enjoy doing outside of the pastoring? You obviously do some other things, and just curious about that.
Yeah, no. It's sort of a, how you look back on your life and it's like, wow, how did I get here? And
right. Yeah.
And you're sort of amazed, and yet you can look back and see where the threads are, right? Because I was such a constant learner, I felt like I needed to deposit that learning somewhere. So the purpose of learning is not to just sort of keep it in your head. It really is to share it with people so you can help them.
Sure.
So I think what happened to me was two things. Number one, I felt like I wanted to blend the spiritual and the natural. I didn't see a separation of the two. I felt like, no, if I learned something from God, it should apply to my life and vice versa. My life should actually have a relevant connection to what God is telling me. And so as I pursued the spiritual side, I also wanted to deposit into the natural side. If I combined those two things, it really became, I just want to help people. The most fulfilling role for me wasn't a corporate role, although within corporate roles, I was a consultant, essentially. I was a guy that wanted to solve problems, and I went around helping people do so. That's how you would characterize the kinds of roles that I had and the movement that I had within corporate America. But then eventually I said, you know what? I really do want to put the two together, and I want to just help people on both sides because I felt like there were lessons on either side.
Yeah, for sure.
So as I explored it, I said, okay, well, corporate guys need a little bit more spirituality. That's what keeps them healthy. And the spiritual side needs a little bit more discipline and focus on the specifics of how you deliver and deliver well. And so as a result of that, the common friend that we have in Glenn, we met and we said that we both have that heart. We want to blend the spiritual and the natural in a way that enhances both because we think there's synergy. We came together in a consulting firm. And then from that point on, consulting was my thing.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. And I know you've done well at it and impacted lives. Question for you. If
Sure.
you could take a road trip today with anyone, living or dead,
yes.
Who would it be and where would you go?
Wow, that's a hard one because I'd probably say my wife, so I got to bring her at some level.
Yeah, you have to.
Obviously you'd want to travel the road with Jesus becomes the other one. So I'll stay on the natural side of it because Jesus is with us no matter where we go. So I'm good there. I think my wife is the most special person I've ever met.
That's great.
I would go anywhere with her. I've traveled the world without her. In this season, I think traveling the world with her would be just as much a benefit to her as to me.
Yeah.
Where would I go? I think I would drive. I'm not a big flyer because I've been flying all my life, so I'm tired of it.
You can't see the scenery if you fly, right?
You really can't. I would drive to Napa Valley from Cincinnati, and I would stop multiple places along the way and just let my wife enjoy it. And we would enjoy it together.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. She loves Napa because now we have family that lives out there. I don't want to fly out there because, again, I'm tired of flying. But if we had the time, I'd get a nice vehicle. I'm a big fan of nice vehicles. We'd get in it and we'd just tool across the country to Napa Valley through, we'd see the Grand Canyon. We'd go through parts of Utah, Nevada. We would really sort of do it up that way.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to encourage you to do that because I am Dan, the road trip guy.
That's the truth.
So I want you to do that. And I'm going to suggest when you head out that good old Route 50 runs right through our town here of Cincinnati. And Route 50 will take you through some of the most beautiful country through Colorado, Nevada, Utah.
No kidding.
You can take a detour off of it and run down to the Grand Canyon and come back up and continue on your way to Sacramento, which will put you pretty close to Napa Valley. And I'm going to tell you, it is the most amazing drive that you will take. So
apparently you've done it.
I've done some of it. And so Linda and I drove from Denver to Sacramento on 50 in 2019, and because I wanted her to see it. And there are areas where there is nothing, and you just go, wow, this is vast. And it just gives you an appreciation for God's creation.
Yeah. So, no, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
So cool. I highly recommend that.
Awesome.
Anything on your bucket list? Big item on the bucket list that you want to do, and maybe it's with your wife, or maybe it's just something you want to do, and you can go, yep, check that off.
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, you know how your childhood sort of leaves a mark on you. I would love to get in a fighter jet, and like in California, there's a place you can go. You can fly a MiG. You can get in a seat with an F-18 or an F-16. I would love to do that. I never did get my pilot's license, believe it or not, but I essentially know how to fly because I've been in simulators and done all kinds of weird stuff in ground school. So I'm pretty effective there. But I've never actually flown an airplane myself.
Oh, you have to do that.
Yeah, that's on my bucket list. I would at least want to do that once and just have that experience, finally fulfill that itch that's always been there through my life.
Yeah. Well, hey, our virtual road trip's coming to an end. We're pretending we're pulling back into your driveway. I'm going to let you out.
Awesome.
I always like to give an opportunity at the end for my guests to tell people how to find them, find a charity, find church, in your case, whatever you want to share, how they can find you.
Yeah. Our church is in Loveland. It's Sozo Loveland, and it's on Field Turtle Road in Loveland. So you can look us up on the web. So that's not hard. I'm always happy to see different people come and just enjoy themselves. Hopefully I'll give a message that's real and connected to life. I try to do that. Also, my consulting is called Preceptus, Preceptus, LLC. I love helping leadership teams. I love team building, organizational design, and also strategy. We do a lot of work with strategy. Our other company is called Archpoint Consulting. Archpoint is one word, and it's out of San Antonio, but we're a virtual team of people who come in and help you plan your business and think about the future.
Yeah.
So those are 3 ways you can get me. Obviously, LinkedIn, look me up, Stephen Peele. I do have a son by my name, so look for Stephen Peele Sr., not Jr.
Yeah, I should have said senior when I introduced you.
No, it's all right. That's fine.
Preceptus, that was... you were in Glenn's creation.
That's right. That's right.
Serves me correct.
It was.
Glenn Veronic. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, Stephen, it has been an absolute pleasure for me. I hope you've enjoyed our little road trip here, and I'll
awesome.
Look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Okay. Keep it safe on the road, as they say, right?
That's right. Keep talking.
All right.
All right.
All right. Take care, man.
Bye now.
All right. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Dan, the Road Trip Guy, and we look forward to having you back again next time. In the meantime, if you want to find me, you can find me on the internet at Danny, D-A-N-N-Y, Neal, Neal.com. Until we meet up again, keep having conversations and keep driving.